Beans, Henshin a go-go, baby. What's good, guys? Yoku here, and we're gonna go over the Prydwen tier list because why not? You guys know what it is, I know what it is, but I did see a couple different changes. I saw that we have the weapon, the W engine, the signature W engine. Saw that now we have that, right? Which is pretty cool. So I'm on stream right now. You guys can see that over here. We got over here. So I want to see what's going on with the changes for just adding the signature W engines in general. Drastically changes a lot of how I would personally view Prydwen's tier list. We talk about this quite often on the channel, and I always tell you guys that my issue isn't so much the placements, it's always the reasoning behind it, and then how they counter or contradict the criteria that is being told to us. But now we're here, now we get to see it. Let's kind of just jump right into it.
Are you tired of losing? Are you tired of losing those 50-50s to bullshit? Don't worry, big dog, I got just the deal. Introducing Lootbar, a popular top-up website that offers you purchases up to 23% cheaper. Nani? Now you can score that cool jafufu without missing a beat. Using Lootbar is actually pretty easy too. All we have to do is pick the pack we want, type in our game UID, make the purchase, and voila. But wait, there's more. Not only does Lootbar use the same in-game routing as Zenless, but they're even working around 7 days a week to provide their own trustworthy service. And because I'm me, just for you guys, I got Lootbar to double down. New users get a 10% off coupon right now. And I also have an exclusive link down below in the description that you can use to get a discount on top of that. Now get out there and go pull that new character.
So we're on the Prydwen tier list, or on the website for the tier list. Trying to like look at just what we have so far. I'm gonna keep a little bit of a, I don't want to go too far down. We do have tier 0 and we have tier 0.5. We see that 2 changes, actually three changes. Seed has been brought up. I immediately don't agree with this, but we'll talk about it. Orphie is immediately placed in tier 0.5. I told you guys, I predicted it. Y'all asked me last time, where do I think Orphie is gonna go? Where do I think Orphie is gonna be at? And I said, I think this character is gonna get immediately slapped in a tier 0.5. More specifically, or rather the reason being, because she was an off-field agent. And as I've said, I've kind of pointed it out, even though this isn't specifically the criteria behind that, I do want to make it clear. When I say this pertaining to Prydwen, I pointed out like the different characters and like how they play, right? Prydwen's characters in the Apex category are typically characters that play themselves. You don't really have to do too much thinking to play these characters, and they pump out a lot of supportive buffs, debuffs, or they just crap out damage for free. Those are the characters that sit in the tier 0.5 and above, the Apex category, right? Anything that requires you to do the slightest amount of work is a meta character or below. Oh, what do you mean by that? That's not true. Yes, it is. Trigger is back up here in 0.5. Mind you, with the W engine, we're gonna talk about that. That's the 3rd change. Orphie landed in 0.5. As we saw before, Seed landed in tier 1 because Seed requires you to do a little bit of work, right? Seed is a double DPS or a dual DPS character. She required players to learn a different play style, and this wasn't something that a lot of players immediately sunk their teeth into. They still don't like the way that she plays, but you know who came out and all of a sudden made Seed just so much easier and comfortable to play? Orphie. I'm going to talk about this right now before we actually go into the changelog, and we'll read why they placed Seed up here. I just want to give my own think piece on this. Speaking on Seed, I talked about it before, and I said why Seed was a misunderstood character, or why she felt like a very misrepresented character. I have a video on the channel talking about that. You can see it up here. There's a little bubble that'll pop up right here. You guys can see that. I also went ahead and explained in another number of videos after that pertaining to Seed that this character was a different play style, and that when Orphie came out, it wasn't going to be that Orphie magically fixed the way that Seed plays. No. What's happening is Orphie is making up for the absurd amount of damage that Seed would get if you could hyper carry Seed. We talk about this all the time, and you guys know how indifferent I feel toward hyper carry. I don't hate it. I just don't like what it does to the general player and the way that they absorb information outside of hypercarry. That sounds probably complicated. I apologize if I'm trying to explain it in that way, but TLDR of what is in my head, let me go ahead and put it out in words. When a player is so focused on only hypercarry and they only believe that hypercarry is the way, nothing else can be done, nothing else is good, nothing else is better, double support is always the play. Any player that tells you something like that, it's not that they're wrong, right? Because they're looking at just from a numbers perspective. This makes way more sense in a game like Star Rail, where it is turn-based. You have very little control over your character. In a game like Zenless, it's more applicable for you to take into account how do these characters play together and who's doing what. If you were to play Seed, Trigger, and Astra, you don't activate Seed's passive, which means you're knocking out the bonuses or the buffs that she would give herself. If you were to play Seed, Astra, and then Nicole, I guess, right? Or Yuzu, just another support that gives you a crap ton of attack and buffs. This is gonna turn into a situation where Seed is getting super buffed up, hyper carried, so that all you have to do is focus on playing Seed on the field. But because Seed's kit intuitively does not work that way, like you have to play her as a quick swap, right? If you guys have been paying attention to the Seed clears, the Deadly Assault kills, or the faster Shiyu 7 clears that have been popping up on YouTube, both from the global side and from the Japanese player base, you'll notice how fast they're switching characters, right? You look at Seed gameplay, they're in and out, in and out, in and out. Sambi and Seed, in and out, in and out, in and out, right? Seed and Evelyn, in and out, in and out. Seed and Nekomata, in and out, like that, in and out burger. Anyway, that's how they play the team, and that's how you're supposed to play the team. Doing double support, it further de-incentivizes you to play that way. It also doesn't teach you how to play that way. So now, Orphie brings you the damage of a double support. So if you were to play Seed, Astra, and Orphie on the team, this essentially feels like you have two Astras, but one is doing damage. This is the general player base here. In reality, Orphie doesn't play like Astra. They don't function the same at all. Orphie is an attack agent. She just doesn't have to be on field. So Orphie being in tier 0.5 underneath the secondary DPS, even I'm saying this character is tier 0.5, arguably tier 0. If we're keeping it a buck, I would argue that Orphie could be tier 0, but I also argue that Nagi is tier 0. So maybe there needs to be some separations between there. I'm not entirely too sure, but if we're talking about Seed, the reason I said earlier that I don't agree with Seed getting bumped up to tier 0.5 strictly because of Orphie is because if you bring Seed up with Orphie, like the reason that you're bringing Seed up is because of Orphie, by default, Soldier Zero Ambi also has to get brought up pre-buff. But if you bring this character up, right, you bring Seed up, no expert tag, no partner tag, by default, you have to bring Sambi up. I'm fine with Seed staying in tier 1. I'm not gonna lie to you. Not because I think she's weak, not because I hate Seed. Y'all know I actually put a lot of work into building my own Seed and my own Sambi. I like these characters a lot. It's strictly because of the fact that at a baseline level, she's not outputting the same combat performance that the other three characters in this roster are doing, Yanagi, Evelyn, and Alice. Just like at a flatline level, she's not outputting the same combat performance that these characters are doing. However, Seed's kit as a whole, being able to be, especially paired with Orphie, she buffs other attack agents and dishes out her own, relatively speaking, strong damage, right? Like strongest damage in a way. So it's you could argue that she's in tier 0.5. I just wouldn't agree with that because of Orphie. With that same argument, couldn't Seed be 0.5, or does she need more units to support this? No. And I think that's kind of like what I was explaining just there, right? It's less about Seed needing something else and more about these characters being at a baseline level, right? Alice at a baseline level is basically Miyabi Jr., if we're keeping it a buck. This makes sense. You don't need another character to make Alice do what she does. She's strong on her own. She abuses the disorder system on her own. She has her own version of disorder, and by association, Nagi is the exact same way. Nagi takes advantage of all elemental disorders or all elemental attributes, right? Count the attribute counter. She takes advantage of all of them, just like Alice can. And so they have their own form of that. Evelyn is just straight up the best attack agent in the game. She's just a monster. Simple to play, but can get complicated. So very low entry floor. Barrier to entry, very easy, right? Very low skill floor, or low skill floor, high skill ceiling. And she's able to output a ridiculous amount of damage. Adding components to their teams takes them further beyond. In Seed's case, at a baseline level, this character is what I would consider being a tier 1 character. I think Seed is at the top of the meta, right? The meta character, she's at the top of that list. But I don't think she's so cracked that she would jump into the Apex category on her own. And this is why I'm saying, like, if you were to add a partner tag, it would make a little bit more sense visually. I've yapped enough about this. Let's kind of read the change logs and see what Prydwen has to say about that. In this update, we're converting our tier list from non-SIGs to using any of the standard signature weapons or engines and P5 A rank engines to signature any limited S rank engine, right, at P1, which is great. This decision was made based on community feedback, shout outs to you guys, after much deliberation and by reviewing our large in-game player performance data to close to around 30,000 players, a large majority of which are using some form of signatures on their characters. I want you guys to understand, just to point out this little numerical factor. Prydwen just gave us the information that we've been talking about for a long time. How large is the player base when it comes to in-game? How many players are actually attempting or playing in-game? The majority of players are casual players who play in-game, right? The majority of players, or the majority of in-game players, are casual players. That's not true. We know that. Nix has said it, I've said it, Josh has said it. The numerical data, we have the numerical data to show that this isn't true. In-game is already not a mode for casual players as it is, but then to go beyond that, the majority of players who do play in-game or attempt in-game are also not casual players. This isn't to say that casual players don't play in-game, but they do not make up the majority for in-game. Now we have actual numbers coming from Prydwen directly, with them saying roughly close to about 30,000 players is where they're getting their information, their performance data for the players, for this round at least. And a majority of them do use signature W engines on their characters. What does that tell us, and what should we start taking into account? Well, now we do start taking into account, at least when we talk about these conversations of like what an in-game build should look like, what in-game should represent on your account, or like if an account is ready for in-game, a large majority of which are using signature W engines on their characters, which encouraged Prydwen, or gave them that little boost they needed to start including limited W engines into their calculations, their decisions, or their decision making, so on and so forth. This little bit of information is enough for us collectively as a community that does care about in-game. Now we can start looking at players' accounts and saying, hey, get the W engine. It's expected of you to get the character and the W engine if you want to perform at this level, or whatever the case may be. So now when I'm actually really interested in seeing where the numbers are now with their stuff, if they've gone up or stayed the same now that they're calculating the signature W engines. But let's continue on. The tier list criteria will now assume all characters are ranked with their best P5 A rank or P1 S rank engines. We have reevaluated each character and found currently this only affects the recently dropped trigger enough to move her a tier. I don't agree with this. Maybe I don't agree with this, maybe I do. Let me look at the rest of the tier list and let me confidently say that first. They'll continue to monitor, we know about that. Let's look at the actual adjustments that's happened. So Orphie and Magus added as a tier 0.5 secondary DPS. Orphie earns her place in tier 0.5 by elevating Seed's performance and forming a powerful duo alongside her. While Orphie is a combat agent, we're placing her in the secondary DPS category due to her more supportive nature and tendency to play in a lesser field time role compared to the carry she is supporting. It should be worth noting at the time of her release, Orphie has far more limited viable teams than most, pushing her incredibly close to needing the partner tag. With that said, on top of Seed, she also works well enough with Soldier Zero Ambi and can find some use elsewhere as well. If we were going to use the term viable, maybe that's what I don't agree with that term. I don't agree with the term viable. I think Orphie actually has some pretty good teams that she can work with that are viable teams. And when I say viable, I'm talking about like you can, if we're looking at this from a Deadly Assault perspective, you can clear. You can get your 25k to 35k. If we're looking at this from a Shiyu defense perspective, you can clear. You can clear with your 130, right? Your 1 minute and 30 seconds using these teams. Orphie can work with a number of DPS characters we have in the game right now. Obviously not all of them. She can work with some. She is in a weird place, yes. But I think she's in the place where she needs to be. Like, it's not weird for her to be here because she's supposed to be here. But you know what? Happy. That's a good, I was gonna wait to bring that up, but you kind of brought it up. I remember in the last one, I talked about this and I told you guys with Seed, I said that I'm real positive Prydwen is gonna look at Orphie as like the Seed partner, right? Like that is what's gonna help Seed the most. When in reality, Orphie is, actually, I'll say it, Orphie is designed perfectly to work with Soldier Zero Ambi. This is why I'm saying earlier, right? When I mentioned Seed going up, by default, Soldier Zero Ambi should have been brought up in a tier 0.5 as well. If anything, Soldier Zero Ambi should have been the one considered to go up first instead of Seed. Now, what I think is going to happen, what I think they're doing is they're going to wait for the buffs, right? They're waiting for Sambi buffs, and then they'll use the Sambi buffs on top of Orphie being in the game now. They're going to use that to justify bringing Soldier Zero Ambi up to 0.5, possibly tier 0, depending on if these buffs are really strong for her, right? Because I keep saying it. Right now, the Soldier Zero Ambi team is an Apex team. It is a tier 0.5 team. It is a top tier team. If you happen to have Soldier Zero Ambi, Trigger, and Orphie at M0 with at least, and I say with at least 2 W engines because like obviously we're talking about in game, we're talking about power. If you have them ready to go just at M0, this team is already a top tier, top 5, top 10 team, somewhere in that ballpark. If you have M1 Trigger or M1 Orphie, that team immediately jumps into top 5 territory. And if you happen to have, or rather when we get Sambi buffs, it will be inarguable that this team is going to jump up there, or it would be placed in top 5, right? But it is what it is. Seed goes from tier 1 to 0.5. As announced in the prior changelog, Orphie's release is expectedly a big boost to Seed's meta relevancy, being her new best teammate and pushing her ceiling high enough to deserve the 0.5 rating. This I can't disagree with. I think Seed's second best teammate is still Sambi, but if we're talking like her just genuine best, the one that I'm seeing get the highest performing scores is with Orphie. Jason did the couch and said that Sambi, Seed, and Astra is the strongest post Sambi buff. I don't know Sambi's buff to have the information on that. I can't really speak on that, right? If the calcs say it, obviously I'm gonna test it. I don't think that Sambi, Seed, and Astra wouldn't be bad, but I do think with Orphie, I can't imagine how that wouldn't be the better team. But then this is also, are we looking at this from a just purely numbers perspective, or are we looking at this from like the game, right? Zenless. Because as we all know, Zenless is matchup based. Some things work, some things don't. Like it's easier to play a team for hypercarry, for instance, with Astra, when you don't have to worry about the stun. But then against a different boss, right? Like for instance, Hugo. A lot of players had issues with Shadow Hugo, and they didn't really understand why. One of the key reasons why so many players were having issues with Shadow Hugo or Miasma Hugo, the same concept, right? Was because they didn't have a stunner on the team. And so this goes into what I mentioned earlier when I was talking about what happens when you teach somebody only hypercarry, right? The only thing that matters is double support. Hypercarry is the best thing, You're not helping them learn how to think and move around the actual game. Like you're not teaching them how to critically think, how they should approach the game with what they have on their account. Hugo with stunner on the team equals no more problem. Like you clean the board, right? You don't have to worry about that. Why? It's not about the stun window, which I know a lot of people will bring that up like, oh, well, you know, his stun window is really small anyway. He has the shortest stun window, and it's not going to help you if you can't like maximize damage, because there's not a lot of characters that can maximize within a short stun window. This is true. Yeah, you can burst him down, but Hugo is the type of character, and all of us are made aware of this. If you fought in Hugo with Miyabi, with Alice, even Evelyn, any character that has long animations, which are positive for us because iframes, if you fight Hugo, guess what Hugo can do? Oh, damn, that's crazy. You're doing your big enhanced basic attack? Wow. I know I got hit by the first 3 moves, but today, right now, in this exact moment in time, I don't feel like getting hit. I'm gonna dodge. Ooh, I dodged your big move. Oh, you still have more moves coming out? Like it's the same enhanced basic attack with more slashes? That's cute. Parry. All of your big dick damage magically goes away, and you continue to do this when you're playing hypercarry because you have nothing to stop him. There's not a physical stunner on your team, or rather something to help you just stop him for just a moment in order for you to get those hits, right? And that's why like learning the matchup, I stress that so much, learning the matchup with a lot of these different things. And like, guys, I'm working on something. It's literally going to be called learn the matchup. I'm working on something. Hopefully we can get it out within the next week. My first little project that I want to do for you guys is kind of like a tidbit inside of this video. A lot of y'all have been asking me, teach me how to fight these bosses, teach us how to do this, teach us how to use these teams against certain things, so on and so forth. I think it's time that I finally like force myself to do that and stop being lazy about it, and I'm working on it. Give me a little bit, it's happening, okay? That's a little sneak peek for anyone that happens to be in the stream right now. You guys get early access to that. Anyone that sees the video, you guys get early access to that after the stream, right? All of the bosses, as many bosses as we can work with. I've put together a team we're working together on this so we can try and tackle as much as possible. I invite any orange/red level players, anyone that wants to be able to also assist me in this project, because it's a lot of data collecting, but it's in-game data collecting more so than it is like numerical collecting, right? Like I'm not really looking for numbers. I'm looking for the physical actions that happen in the game, and then your options expanded beyond that. So anybody that wants to help with that, just reach out and I can add you. I'm trying to keep it small. Like I need you to know what you're doing because it helps me make it so much smoother. But yes, as many bosses as we can do, I'm gonna work on it. We're gonna try and compile it into like a data sheet or whatever, and maybe it'll be in the Discord for now. We're gonna compile everything in the Discord. I might release them in the future, but let me work on it first, right? That's a little tidbit. Back to the actual, like that was a short segment in the video, right? Like just a brief cut in, a EO ad, if you will. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, that was just the Apex tier, right? We talked about, oh wait, did they talk about Trigger going up? Oh, here we go. Trigger, tier 1 to 0.5. In our last update, Trigger was dropped down a tier due to the sheer power her signature provides and the impact it has on teams she plays within. With the tier list now rating characters with signatures, she's moving back to tier 0 or tier 0.5. I don't think anybody's arguing against this. I understand that some players, I saw it on Twitter, some players are like, oh my God, why would Prydwen like drop her down just to bring her back? Because of the signature W engine. So I think this is valid. We all said Trigger without her engine is a completely different character. Trigger with her engine is like, that is creme de la creme. Her being in 0.5, absolutely deserved, easy peasy lemon squeezy. No one should have any issues with this. It's fine. For the most part, if I was just reviewing the Apex category, pretty damn good. I only have my gripe with Seed, right? Like that's literally the only thing that I have my gripe with right now is Seed being up here because of Orphie. Neither one of them having a partner tag, and Soldier Zero Ambi also not jumping up here, because that is the key. We already had Trigger, and we're including W engines, mind you. Like let's just talk about that for just a second. We're including W engines into the, or signature W engines into the tier list now, which means Sanbi has whatever it's called, Severance. She has Severance. That's a busted ass W engine for her and any electric agent for that matter. Trigger has her W engine with the defense shred, which now helps Sanbi perform even better. And we have Orphie, who not only has her W engine based off the new tier list update, but Orphie specifically lowers the defense. She shreds the defenses for aftershock attacks, which Sanbi does have in her kit. She's the only aftershock DPS we have. Just with this information alone, Sanbi should have jumped up to 0.5. She should have been considered for 0.5 before Seed was considered for 0.5, but we're done with Apex category. We're gonna move on to the meta characters, which it looks like only one change was made here. And we see that Hugo dropped to tier 1. Now we knew it was coming. But here's the thing. If we're only looking at Deadly Assault, Hugo dropping makes sense. If we're looking at Shiyu defense, Hugo is still one of the fastest clearers in the game. There's also something that I want to talk about. We'll save it for another video. I will do it in this stream, but we'll save it for another video. I'm sure we're all aware of the new type of boss coming out, the alleged freeze immune boss, but it's ice weak. So a lot of the conversation that jumps up that talks about this is like, yo, this is, you know, it's for Miyabi. I say it's a hard Miyabi counter, right? It's made to counter Miyabi. And then another player or a multitude of players will say, oh, but that hurts all the other ice agents. That hurts Yidhari. That's gonna hurt Hugo. That's gonna hurt Ellen. It's actually the opposite. I thought about it. I ran some simulations in my head, like how would this genuinely affect these particular characters? The other ice agents don't give a damn about freezing the enemy. They care about the shatter. Now, freezing during stun is still very powerful, don't get me wrong. Freezing the enemy is always a powerful thing, but they don't care enough to where it drastically affects their combat performance. Hugo doesn't give a damn if someone's frozen or not. Like he's gonna clean them up. That one tap skill, one tap ult, they're still taking that full 2.5 mil, right? 1.7 mil, 2.5 mil, 3.2 mil, whatever your Hugo does in that ballpark. They're still gonna take that damage. Ellen doesn't really care. Oh, what about my freeze into ult combo? Just pop the ult. And you're still gonna get the damage, get the combo out, and you're good to go, right? And then whenever Yidhari comes out, I mean, she's a Monster Hunter character, right? With the Monster Hunter hammer. I don't really think she's gonna care about freeze either, but you know, maybe she will. I don't know. I'll have to wait and see whenever Yidhari gets here, or we see some more Yidhari. I think the live stream is gonna happen on Monday, so we'll probably see Yidhari and the animations that are coming from that. I'm really excited for that, but it is what it is. I don't know, dude. Going back to Hugo, right? And like, Sayara, you're asking as well, do you think Shiyu should be considered as in-game? Shiyu is absolutely in-game. Shiyu defense, Deadly Assault, and Tower. Those are the 3 in-game modes we currently have. I think the next update we're getting, 2.4 or 2.3, whatever this is for the live stream, I think that's when we're supposed to be getting the unannounced new in-game. So we'll have 4 different in-games now. They're all in-game, which is like, you have to cater that, right? And I've said this before, certain teams perform significantly better in Deadly Assault versus Shiyu defense because they're just made for that. You know, it's easier for them. And it doesn't mean that they can't do one or the other, but we all kind of know it, right? If you play Hugo, if you've seen Hugo in Deadly Assault is a much worse performing character compared to Hugo in Shiyu defense at M0, by the way, right? At M0. Let me see why they dropped Hugo. 0.5 to tier 1. As in-game progressively increases in difficulty, the requirements demanded of teams also increase. As of late, Hugo has been performing more in line with characters in tier 1 than characters currently residing in tier 0.5. For that reason, we're adjusting his tier list rating for now. Prydwen, if you guys happen to watch this video, which I mean, I know you guys do, but when you listen to this, right, and do me a solid, or Grim, whoever's writing these up, I think it would be so much more beneficial for you guys if you gave us a lot more description behind the reasoning. As of late, Hugo's been performing more in line with characters in tier 1 than characters currently residing in tier 0.5. How and why? I think if you answered the how and why for players, it'd be easier for them to digest, myself included, to be able to digest why the drop was made, because this, looking at it this way, leaves it open for all the usual arguments that we always have, or the back and forth that people make, right? Like, oh my god, how could you drop Hugo? My Hugo still cracks 5 million debt, right? I just feel like it would be a little bit more beneficial. Everyone else being in this position, minus obviously Sambi, we already talked about her, I think it's fine. I'm still in favor of bumping Qingyi up. I still think this character is a 0.5 character, especially if we're talking about what she offers to the table, the ability to be able to stun incredibly fast, and the fact that she works with every other character that's at the top anyway. Qingyi can work with Seed and Orphie. She can work with Sambi and Orphie. She can work with Evelyn. Qingyi can work with Alice. She can, you'd probably want to use Trigger more just because that is like Alice's second best team, if I'm not mistaken, or second best archetype of a team. Qingyi works with Miyabi. I've already shown that. Qingyi works with Ishwin. That's one of her best stunners, right? Qingyi is one of Ishwin's best stunners. So we're talking, we have Zhu Yuan. Qingyi works with Zhu Yuan. She works with Hugo. She works with Ellen. She works with Haramasa. She works with Soldier 11. Qingyi's not a tier 1 character. I think she's only down here again because lack of, or rather the necessity to play the agent more than not play them. I'm gonna stick by that, right? Apex characters, all these Apex characters are kind of at the top because you have to play them less. It's less of a requirement for you to be able to do something with these characters. But we're finishing off tier 3. Nothing's changed here, right? If it, same stuff that I would say before. Bump up Seth. I think Nekomata and Billy for the most part, actually, especially if we're looking at this from a physical DPS standpoint. I'm gonna make a hot take. I do believe at this current moment in time, Billy and Nekomata have proven themselves with results to be considered tier 2 meta characters. We've seen the results, not only from just something like Run and Bun, which is an event that Josh and I run, but we're also seeing this from brand new players or players who were previously new players and now they're not new players. They're getting into the end game and their only physical DPSs would be Billy or possibly Nekomata, and they're moving on up. They're getting those 20k clears, 25k clears, 29k clears in Deadly Assault. And with the addition of Seed, specifically Seed, they're flawlessly executing through CU defense. I usually lurk, but I wanted to say keep up the great work and thank you for your honest opinions and content. I really appreciate hearing your takes and learning about Zenless's meta and characters through you. Thank you very much again. Yo, Kiryoko, thank you. I appreciate that. You guys have no idea, like when listen, real talk EO for like half a minute tops. I've been in my own head for like the last month, borderline there on like just done with everything. It means a lot whenever you guys come in the chat and I see the comments and I see how much you appreciate the things that I do, because it really does feel like EO versus the world. Okay, and is one of my favorite movies Scott Pilgrim vs. the World? Yes, absolutely. Okay, movie's a classic. I love that shit despite all of its flaws. I think the flaws are what make it great, but it really does feel like EO versus the world a lot of the times in this content space. And I think every content creator at some point feels like it's them versus the world, right? But it really feels like that for me. So it is what it is. But thank y'all. It means a lot when you guys do stuff and say stuff like that for me. So I appreciate that. EO moment over. I'm trying to take care of myself. You guys know I was in the gym. I've been in the gym lately. So y'all are saying you see the differences. I still can't see the differences, but we're chilling. We're chilling. I want to say though, that would probably wrap up the actual tier list itself. Something that I mentioned earlier when we were talking about Apex characters, I do want to see the rankings or the scores for Deadly Assault. Now that they've changed things, including the S ranks, M0 and all W engines. This is interesting. We're not really seeing that big of a score increase. What is that? Maybe like a 4,000 point difference, somewhere between like 5,000 to 6,000 point difference. That, relatively speaking, is a pretty big number for a lot of these characters. But now it does make sense, right? If I look at Alice goes from 24 without a signature W engine, 28. So about a 4,000 point increase with her W engine. Nagi with her W engine at 20K. Then she goes to 17K without her W engine. Evelyn is at 18K. And then with it, she goes up to 22. I don't know, man. It's so weird because you know for a fact, Evelyn was already clearing or should have been clearing on average 20K or above. Adding her W engine would easily bump up your damage from just her alone to hit that 30, high 30 or mid 30s to 40 mark. But we don't see that here. Hugo, 16K without his W engine, or with his W engine, my bad. Without his W engine drops all the way down to 12K. I feel like what needs to happen is I think they need to revamp how they look at the scores. Because are we looking at these scores the same way that we would look at the tier list? Like the tier list, right? The tier list is, hey, we're taking everything with their best 3-man teams in mind, you know, or close to it as possible. But these rankings are submitted data. Everyone doesn't have the best teams when submitting this data. For all we know, someone's playing Seed, Han Yuwu, and Astra on the same team, and they're getting the 25K and submitting that data. And because it falls in line with M0, W0, it's making the clear. So I'm like, how do we get to that point? You know what I mean? Because you can't just say, oh yeah, Seed on average gets 25K. With what team? On average, with I guess would be her best team, I think it's a little higher than 25K. But I don't know. Maybe that might just be sweaty territory. Maybe it's just like a player diff. I don't know. Shiyu defense will be the last thing we look at here. Just for my own personal thingies, right? Because I don't think this is. Yeah, this isn't the new data, right? Yeah, this isn't the brand new data. I'm looking at this because I want to see, right? Like the cutoff period is definitely Harumasa, maybe Evelyn. It's like 1 second over, but this is interesting. Anyhow, that's gonna be it. You guys let me know your thoughts and opinions on the Prydwen tier list update. For the most part, I like to go in like gap a lot when it comes to this stuff because I do have a lot of extended thoughts on what they're doing. I just want you guys to have more information on why some changes may or may not be had. But let me know down below. I'll do my best to respond to any constructive conversations going on as well, or any questions that you guys might have. As of right now, I am getting ready to, what were we supposed to do again? I know we're doing the final review for Orphie, but there was something I said I was gonna do during this and I don't remember anymore. But it is what it is. I can't say my usual outro because it's inappropriate for YouTube. Like the video, comment, subscribe. Know you later.